I'm Andrew Patterson from interest.co.nz, and with me today, Stephen Newman, Chief Executive at Eroad. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Stephen, tell us a little bit about what Eroad actually does, how it works, and the technology involved here.
Is a very new type of business, first in the world. In New Zealand, we pay for the maintenance on our roads through road user charges. So we've started off with modernising that and turning it electronic. So instead of being a very paper-based system, it's now all in the cloud. In the vehicle we have a distance recorder which measures the distance, and then you're charged based on the distance travelled by the vehicle on the public road, which seems all very simple, but when you start peeling it back, if you're going to measure distance, you need to know that you're measuring it accurately, and when you're not measuring it accurately, what do you do? So we have multiple sensors measuring distance, cross-checking it, and when we get into a degraded state of measuring distance, then there's a whole set of business rules that we put in place to correct that situation and estimate distance.
Give us a sense about what these costs actually involve, because obviously for many motorists, the majority of motorists, they just drive on the roads not even having to worry, but obviously for those in the fleet management business, this is a major cost of what they actually do.
Yes, road user charges for New Zealand operators is generally in the top 4 of their biggest costs. If you get it wrong, it can get extremely expensive. So with our system, you work out what road distance you want to buy as an ongoing licence. It automatically buys it, deducts your bank account, pays it to NZTA. So you don't need to worry about accidental non-compliance, and you can focus on the big deal, which is running your business.
And this is all technology created in New Zealand. Just give us a sense of how complicated it was to make all this actually happen. I mean, it sounds simple in practice, yes, but obviously the back end support is pretty extensive, isn't it?
Yes. So this, I suppose, from a New Zealand perspective, is most probably one of the bigger technology bets any private enterprise has made in the country. So we had to develop pretty well everything from a clean piece of paper. So we developed our distance recorder. We also developed our web services, which included a bank-grade infrastructure. It has to be high availability, because the idea that you can't buy your road user charges because the system's down is unacceptable. So we had to develop all that IP. So we had about 45 engineers and developers working on the project for 2.5 years before we went to market. In parallel with that, there was a big project which was working with MOT and NZTA to look at how you would introduce an electronic road user charge system, and that also requires some changes to laws. So in addition to making this very heavy technology bet, we were also having to get laws changed in order to commercially operate. So in hindsight, a bit of a big call.
Absolutely. But the potential is there down the track at the moment. I think you're collecting about 15%
Yes,
of the market. And what do you think that could go to?
So we collect 15% from heavy transport. Our budget has us going to about 25% during this financial year.
And that becomes profitable for you then?
The business is cash flow positive. We're spending about 68% of revenue on further product development for extending our value-added services and also developing solutions for offshore markets.
Tell us a little bit about the potential opportunities here, particularly from an export perspective.
Yeah, the export opportunity is immense. If I compare this back to my days at Navman, this opportunity eclipses any one of the opportunities that we had in that space.
And that's exciting because obviously you could see the business becoming, quite significantly larger over time.
Yes, So when you look at why it's reasonably inevitable, you look at the current situation in most countries with recession. How do we pay for our roads? We can't charge individual taxpayers anymore. So you then start looking at what's the most acceptable way to do that, which is a user-based charge based on the distance and the weight. In some countries they also look at time of day and location, which is kind of your congestion-based type of charging, which is a real social cost for a country. And also they start looking at the engine type, so emissions, so then relating that to pollution. So we've got that as one element. When we start looking at the current way that roads are paid for, which is an excise tax on fuel, that is a poor correlation between road damage and the total social costs being environmental or congestion. So as we need to get more money to pay for the roads, it will become more user-based. And when we start looking at how we reduce congestion, we're talking about bigger trucks causing more damage to reduce the number of conveyances. So it is reasonably inevitable that it will be a user-based tax, like a road user charge, that will be inevitable. When we look at the efficiency of vehicles, they're becoming more efficient. When we start looking at hybrid vehicles like a diesel electric, that represents a 25% reduction in fuel taxes being collected.
What about the competitive space in which you operate? What is the unique aspects of this product versus other products that are available in the market?
So if we look at what we've developed a bank grade secure service delivery mechanism that's highly available. So that's our starting point for us to then overlay other adjacent services, being fuel management, driver behaviour, electronic logbooks. We've got a great starting point, and that's really a lot of what we've developed over the last 18 months of these adjacent services.
Because you can tell when drivers have been exceeding the speed limit and all those sort of things as well, can't you?
Yes. Well, if we look at the driver determines a lot of outcomes. Some of them are safety outcomes and a lot of them are efficiency outcomes. So driving a vehicle fast while dangerous is generally not very efficient either from a fuel consumption perspective. So yeah, we can look at all of those things. If people are driving fast or erratic, then that's potentially also increasing the risk of accident. So using the results from our system, you can also potentially reduce your insurance premiums.
Yeah, and that becomes a significant another significant benefit as well too. Where do you see the greatest potential from an export point of view? Is it in the United States?
When you look at the various areas of inevitability, it's a global phenomenon. America is definitely a key area of interest for us, and quite a focus at the moment. But we would expect, with the freight task increasing 70% in most OECD countries, that it is a wide open opportunity for us.
As a technology business, and you think back of the history and obviously your time at Navman as well too, what have you found have been the complicated areas of this business in terms of a startup? Where have been the processes and parts of that startup that have created you to perhaps lose some sleep?
I think spending a lot of R&D money without any revenue coming in certainly makes you lose a lot of sleep, and you're on a promise from shareholders to deliver something great, and we have done that. I think the Navman experience has been great, developing a high technology business that grew more than 100% every year for 10 years, all the way from about 400,000 up to nearly $500 million So a lot of lessons of developing technology quickly, low risk, and being able to manage high growth. So I think those experiences are great to bring to the Eroad experience.
Mm. And what issues do you have with competition, and how have you maintained your unique position in the market?
So I think the thought processes around road user charges is, I suppose, clean or fresh thinking from a global perspective. Road user charges in New Zealand is kind of a household concept, but offshore it's reasonably radical. So we are in quite virgin territory in terms of how we think about this and managing these type of costs. So there aren't a lot of competitors at this stage. In terms of managing that, we have to go really fast. We need to keep innovating, developing our technology, adding our adjacent services to add value for commercial operators, because at the end of the day they are the guys paying for the service. Yeah.
Obviously, staffing is always a difficulty for businesses in the technology field. Has that been an issue for you, and perhaps some of the ways that you've actually addressed it?
Yeah, it is always an issue. New Zealand is a very small gene pool. We have very good people, but they are very well looked after in the many different technology companies. So, yeah, we are fighting for a scarce resource. I think we have a very exciting story to tell and an exciting future in front of us. I think that helps us a lot. We use a lot of additional external resources from companies like Frond to help with the very heavy moving. We are dealing with money, so we have to take that very seriously, so it's not a place to use new recruits. So we tend to use more intermediate and senior staff. As the business grows and gets depth, we can start bringing on new graduates, etc., but we're not at a stage to look at that.
And I understand all of your staff actually have shares in the company as well. They own something like 80% of it, so I suppose to an extent that perhaps handcuffs them into the business.
Yes, I mean, it's a harsh word, handcuffing them, but I think for any knowledge business, you can have all the good engineering practices of writing everything down and cross-training, but at the end of the day, the only way to really build a technology business fast is the 100% retention of quality staff. The employee shareholder scheme, share purchase scheme that we have had at Eroad has been a key part in retaining and also attracting staff. We have a slightly different variant on that as a mechanism, but definitely shareholder ownership by employees is very, very important part of our future.
Stephen, thank you very much for joining us.